Ladies and gentlemen of the show, I am very, very proud to have with me a very special guest on the startup show here on Babylon Plus. His name is Yousif.
Yes, Yusuf.
Yousif Al-Aziz.
Yusuf Aziz Al-Shaya. My friends call me Joseph. You're welcome to call me that, but Yusuf is my actual given name.
I'm your host, Peter Potros. Very, very welcome to have you on this show. And for
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, nice. It's an absolute pleasure. And to be honest with you, we had a few technical difficulties before we started. The sign here wasn't on yet, but we decided let's go for it.
Yeah.
And thankfully it's working now.
We have great guys working at the studio, so they took care of it.
Fantastic guys.
Very quickly.
And done is better than perfect, I always like to say. They chase perfection, but I think in life sometimes just getting it done, just moving forward, I think roll with the punches, it's best. And today I really want to focus on your business, but I have to say, until we got this sorted, we had a lot of opportunities to talk, and some of the topics we talked about are unbelievable.
I agree.
And some people listening, I think that we really benefit from some of these insights. But firstly, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, first of all. It's my first time doing a podcast, which I'm very interested about because I'm a big fan of podcasts. I watch many of them. And life is... I like to consider and realize the blessings that sometimes we're given. And I realize that, you know, some people are not as privileged as I may be. And I always keep that in mind. So whenever I'm asked that question, how are you? I answer with a huge, satisfied smile, which is, I'm great. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing...
I'm doing fantastic. And to be honest, I'm doing even better. My day was going good. But since seeing you, since speaking to you today, it's really nice when you speak to someone who thinks on a higher level sometimes, that just has an opinion, has an insight on every walk of life. And you can tell the people that have had the experience, they've reflected, they've had some personal troubles. You've not shared those yet with me. Maybe they can come out on the show. I don't know.
100%. We're an open book.
Yeah. But you can tell when someone's like lived through a period of life. And we talked about a little saying before. A person has two lives, and the second one starts when you realize you only have one.
100%.
And I've reached a point in life where when I meet someone, I know when they're on that second phase of life, when they've realized what they want, what they value. And just tell me now, why do you like listening to podcasts? We can share which ones you listen to, but why, fundamentally?
We live in a time where I would say this with confidence that we're the luckiest generation that has ever existed throughout human history. And namely, when it comes to podcasts, you know, before podcast was invented or it became a mainstream form of media, most people would have to travel miles, go to specific locations, go to a university to listen to a lecture, or to be able to have access to these great minds and these great experiences from the most successful, most influential human beings on earth. It was a privilege and not many had access to it. Throughout podcast, you're able to actually dissect, listen to a 3-4 hour uninterrupted conversation of someone with amazing achievements or a great perspective on life, or you know, some experiences that have had an impact on their life, how you can learn from that. And having access to all these unlimited experiences right through a screen while you're either in the gym or at home or at work or doing what you're doing, I think it's an undermined privilege that people oversee and they overlook without actually comprehending the scale of the life-changing lessons that you may be able to learn from these people. And that's the main reason I listen to podcasts. The second reason would be because it's fun.
Yeah.
It's great. Some of them aren't necessarily about, you know, what we talked about, like life experiences or whatever. Some of them are just a fun hangout with a couple of friends where you're able to almost tap in throughout the screen without having to interrupt.
You're like a fly on the wall. You're just
Exactly.
observing them, and it's just like
Yeah.
you're just sitting watching. Like
Could be
Wow.
a celebrity, could be a singer, a hip hop artist that you enjoy, a poet, and a painter. It could be a political figure that you admire. It could be a businessman that you want to hear how their lifestyle is, or a comedian who makes you laugh.
Yeah.
So it's a human experience. It defines so many aspects of human nature into an interview that disregards advertisement or interruptions. Is not planned. Is not there's no questions that are agreed upon prior to having the interview. It just goes with the flow.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I think it's very human.
Very human, very authentic.
Yeah.
And I mean, half the battle is to figure out which ones to listen to. Obviously, you have to understand yourself, what your interests are, and what, because now you can't blame people. There's so much noise. There's so many opportunities to be distracted. And we talked about this briefly before, but like now in 2025, we're in a point where it's a fantastic time to be alive. Endless opportunities, endless knowledge on tap. You can left, right, and center.
No excuse. Yeah.
There's no excuse, but there is the highest amount of distractions possible to deter you from accessing that.
It is actually crazy. You know why? Because now we're living between two forms of media. One of them requires the highest attention span of 3-4 hour conversations.
Yeah.
The other one, like TikTok or Reels, it just seconds where you just want that, hit of dopamine.
Yeah.
So it's time for you to figure out on which side you're gonna be on the fence. Because sometimes I'm not gonna lie, I'm not holier than thou. I always fall for the trap of doom scrolling on.
We're human.
Yeah. But whenever there's, because having to scroll requires your full-on attention, where you have to look at the screen and actually engage.
Yeah.
But when it comes to podcasts, it's easier for me personally because you could be working on an Excel sheet, or you could be working out at the gym, or you could be cooking or whatever. You can just have your headphones on and play it and listen to the conversation without having to actually, which makes it a bit easier for me to actually. That's why I prefer watching podcasts than having.
I like it. It's two birds, one stone. I'm a little bit like that when I'm driving, when I'm cooking, when I'm in the gym. I love listening to podcasts that I can learn from. And one thing I really love about those environments to listen to it is because I'm doing something else that doesn't require my brain or the language part of my brain to process and read information. I'm listening to people speak. If I was to do work that, I'm reading something and at the same time I'm trying to listen to a podcast, it's conflicting. It doesn't work. I do both of them poorly. Whereas in the gym, or if you're cooking, physical, chopping, or, in the gym, lifting weights, or even on the treadmill, you're listening. It's like two different parts of your body are being engaged and developing. And it's like in that 1 hour period of time,
You maximize results.
yeah. And I want to talk to you about that shortly, because obviously this is a business podcast, but a lot of these fundamental traits, fundamental habits that we develop as business owners, they really help us get the most out of life, but also not just, personally, but professionally. Tell me about your business.
So
What is it you do?
We operate in the logistics department. Our company is called Carrying Gate Logistics Services. I was elected as CEO 5 months ago, and we opened an oil procurement department where we pander towards the oil producers and their needs, and we try to enroll in tenders where whatever requirement they have, from A to Z, equipment, chemicals, engineers, or even project management. So our business is mainly B2B, business to business, rather than business to customer. I wouldn't say it's very competitive. It's not the easiest going industry, because the logistics industry is infamously known as let's say a bit challenging when it comes to having to meet client deadlines while having to surpass geopolitical events that may affect the date of your shipment or the date that the vessel is shipped. So some things are sometimes out of your control. You just have to be able to know how to deal with the frustration of the end user. But when it comes to the oil industry, I think is one of the hardest industries to work in and the most challenging. But I think that's why I enjoy working in it, because I suggested our owners to open the oil procurement department just to be able to compete with the big fishes in the market, because it's technically a well-established industry at this point. So to be a newcomer and trying to thrive in that kind of environment is hard. But if you're smart with your choices and you know which projects to tackle rather than which projects to avoid, depending on how many competitors are going to be there, how much how much involvement of specific relationships you have to have, it's going to get easier for you. So that's what we're trying to do right now at the company.
So 5 months ago you became CEO, and just so like everyone can understand, logistics. It sounds like a complicated word. How can we simplify it? So can you
100%.
Yeah, can you just like in layman's terms, what is it that the company actually does?
So
how does it make money?
We take care of the transportation of any goods, general goods, dangerous goods, what could be labeled as explosive when it comes to like specific chemicals that are used in drilling or they are used in some of the other industries.
It's all in oil and gas.
But whatever you need to transport, say you're a supermarket that needs specific foods on the shelf or specific products that you need to ship from the US, you can contact us. We take care of that from A to Z. We do all the clearances because, I'll give you a briefing on how the operation goes. Let's assume you're a car dealer and you want to ship a container of cars from, say, Germany. There are options of how you want to do it, but most clients, they tend to choose the easiest option, which I don't want any of this headache. I'll put you as responsible for the whole shipment. So you pick it up, you ship it.
End.
Yeah, we call it door to door. So you pick it up from the factory, you ship it through Europe, you get it through Turkey, and then through the Iraqi border. You take care of all the legal paperwork, all the procedures, all the clearances, and then you get it to my garage door. And then you have a specific fee that you can charge for that. And it's relatively a lucrative business if it wasn't for the number of competitors who are entering this line of work lately. But nonetheless, if you can provide a good service with competitive pricing, it's always you can always make it work and end the year with a great profit from it.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
A little bit complex, but interesting, and it makes sense. And
not really complex, but the intricacies of it are what makes it complicated. Like,
So
it's not rocket science in terms of anyone can do it. Like,
it's the details.
It's the detail.
And that's what separates perhaps your company from others that might struggle or might. Yeah. For someone starting out, do you think it's a business that they should start, or there are much easier ones that they could consider, or like what got you down the path of entering this line of work? Is your background in like what? Tell me about your story before starting here.
Sure. I graduated oil engineering, petroleum engineering in Czech Republic in 2023. And before that, I was able to get an internship at a local Czech company for valve manufacturing. I worked there as a technical sales engineer.
Okay.
So that term can be broad sometimes, but my role in the company was to receive the client's requirements and to fabricate or design a solution for that specific situation. So say you're a factory or you're a drilling company and you need valves for your operating or for your operation. You'll approach me and you give me the parameters, like what the temperature you're operating in, what kind of pressure you're dealing with, what kind of solution that needs to go through these valves, and I'll be able to design you a specific solution, the kind of metal for the valve, the kind of material, the kind of coating, the kind of thickness, size, and sell it to you with a quotation. I worked there for a year and a half, and once I graduated and finished my studies, I studied oil engineering mainly to actually work where oil exists, which is mainly in our country.
Yeah.
So I just use that as opportunity, as a way to learn and gain experience as much as I can, even though it wasn't necessarily my line of work, my major, so to speak. And it was an interesting experience because Europe has, compared to the Middle East, the regulations
yes.
and the amount of standards that you have to follow, and the rule books that they throw at you once you get through the doors is flabbergasting at times.
And if you can deal with that,
if you
then
can deal with that,
that's easier. It's just like a walk in the park, right?
It's an amazing start for any freshly graduated student to begin, because it gives you an idea of how the international affairs are dealt with, like how things are actually run outside of the Middle East, because the Middle East is very specific to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Not a lot of regions in the world do business the way we do it here. I mean, we're improving, that's for sure, and we're learning, and a lot of expertise that either graduate from the West or the U.S. or Australia are either working there and bringing their experience here, and they're applying the same expertise that they learned from there into the system, or we're just gradually getting into the flow, because nowadays the entire world is modernized through banking, through the requirements of international companies that are investing in the country. And it was an amazing experience that gave me the kickstart that I needed to actually be proficient, and at the same time understand the professionalism of it all. Because when you're a student and you're a freshly graduate, you don't fully wrap your head around the necessity or the importance of following protocol and following the rule book, and you're just living life as a student, not too many burdens that you have on your shoulder. The responsibility and the consequences that you have at university are definitely not the same as working at a company or having people's money involved, where you could actually cause damage to people's investments. And that actually helped me a lot, because even though it was brief, it was 1.5 years, almost 2 years of experience, it gave me an opportunity to, it almost like felt, on paper it was 2 years, but personally, I didn't have any breaks, because as an intern, I was an intern for 6 months, and once they discover they realize if you're worth
if you're
a contract or not. So they offered me the contract, and for the first 2-3 years as a fresh graduate, you don't get any days off. You don't have any holidays. You're the newbie, you're the newcomer, and you have to be there Christmas, summertime. So for 3.5 years, I didn't even come back home to see my family, and I spent them just working and studying at the same time. 1 year I was studying, and the rest I was working. So when I got back here, and while I was there, I received an opportunity to work for an actual oil company.
Where?
Yes, it's called Sahara Middle East. Shout out to Sahara. Great people. I ended our relationship on great terms. My boss, who was Lebanese, had 22 years of experience, and
must have learned a hell of a lot.
That's where I know now. I had the fundamentals in Europe, but everything else I built upon was from my experience at this company. So I started as a logistics supervisor, and then he weaned me on little by little into doing some financing and some contract preparation, like invoices, delivery notes, quotations. I started then doing the governmental procedures for the company. So
almost everything then you've touched.
So by the end of my 2.5 year tenure, I was overseeing entire operations from A to Z, from the first contact from the client to the tendering process, where you have like a huge document of 200 pages with technical requirements, commercial requirements that you have to break down, dissect, understand, source the material that they actually want from international companies, plan the logistics, the shipping, do the clearance, do the governmental procedure, and then once the product arrives at your yard, ship it to the end user, finish off with the delivery notes, the invoices, the financing of it, the wire transfer that they, follow up on everything. So I give a lot of credit to my boss, Daniel Qadi, who I hope, if he listens, is proud of the current state, which because he was very happy but sad at the same time when I had to leave the company.
It's like you're an apprentice with him. Let's
Yes.
say he is, let's say, 4 or 5 steps ahead of you when you started your journey. And by you talking with him, maybe on a daily basis, you're learning from him, but it's like he is sharing his knowledge, his time, his effort to somebody who cares, who wants to apply themselves. And maybe in a way he saw a little bit of himself in you years before when he was early on his journey, and he could relate, and he's like, I appreciate this person. He grew to like you. And obviously there's a transference of information. He's imparting knowledge into your mind, experience, and you obviously helped him out a lot. You're an employee with him. Obviously you're there for a reason, to support the projects that they're on. And so you've probably helped him a lot in Turkey, taking the load off his plate. But it's a natural progression of life. It's I used to mentor people early on in my business, and I remember years after they were working with me, I used to feel this element of sadness when they moved on to another opportunity, or they got a much better opportunity in a different realm that they could apply the skills that they learned with me somewhere else. I remember at the time I was a little bit sad. I have to be honest, sometimes I felt a sense of betrayal, like, loyalty. You feel like you've developed a strong bond, this person's with you. But at the end of the day, everyone's on their own personal journey. And if you're a good leader, which I'm sure your last manager was.
He was an amazing leader.
Then it's a natural progression of life. And you can take it in one of 2 ways. You can take it on the perspective of, oh, this person is gone. I've spent X amount of years working and helping this person develop, and now they think they're better than me. They're going to do it themselves. Or you can have the other approach. I've given this person the gift. They've given me the gift of their time, which, by the way, they'll never be able to get back. But I've given them the gift of the knowledge, the experience, the opportunity. And now they are able to leave my nest and fly and share that elsewhere. And so it's a testament of a good leader. And you yourself, the way that you experienced that, now you're in a position of leadership. I am sure that pleasant experience that you had all along your journey, but especially that last one that you just mentioned, when you have an employee or employees working under you, I'm going to hazard a guess and predict that you would probably be more like that leader who would not be sad, would be very happy for them.
100%. Yeah. It's a fine line, right? Being able to differentiate that selfish need of, okay, I invested so much of my energy. I was selfless with all the experience that I've accumulated over the years, and put it on a gold platter for this person, and for them to leave. Technically, I think the right terminology would be leave the nest and go on their own and have their own ventures. It's very difficult to differentiate for a lot of people, because, some people do it out of pure selfless satisfaction, that if I'm able to help this person enough, first of all, you have to prove that you are worth the investment, because, not all leaders or all bosses or all managers treat all their employees equally. Some employees just try to fill a gap, and they do their part, and they don't have that hunger or that incentive to do more or offer even. So the best thing you can do for your boss is
go the extra mile.
Is go the extra and ask them, like, what else can I do? I've done the basic requirements that you have for me. What else can I need? I want to. It's like you have to be honest with yourself, and then that reflects and it resonates when you are actually well-intentioned and the way you approach your boss. So it definitely is. I'm not gonna lie. It's very challenging to be a leader. It's not easy at all. If it was, everyone would be a leader. But trying to maintain relations, the dynamics, trying to differentiate personal relationships with work relationships, trying to be stern but kind, trying to be. It's a balancing game. It's like it's like you're trying to. You're trying to swim, but at the same time, I don't know how to put it, but it's a very unique, specific position.
You're trying to spin so many balls on your fingers at the same time without any of them falling.
Exactly.
I've got a very, very interesting take on leadership. But before that, I want a quick drink of water.
So. Yeah, go ahead. I'll join you, actually.
leadership, people don't come out of the womb knowing how to be a leader. Some have the natural ingredients to be a leader. Fundamentals. Let's say leadership comprises of 100 different things, and maybe out of those 100 things, you're a 2 out of 10 in some things, 3 out of 10, 5 out of 10 in communication, 8 out of 10 in terms of empathy, understanding their needs before they realize they've got them, blah, 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 figuring out what they've got in the background so that you can make sure that if they're not putting 100% in work, it might not be because they're being lazy or they've disengaged. It might be because something's happening in their family. So many spinning plates, so many spinning balls. You get better of that with time, definitely. But the key element that I've seen from all of the great leaders have been this mindset of lifelong learning. Like you yourself now, I don't know how much leadership experience you have, but because you are a lifelong learner, through osmosis of being around excellent leaders, you've seen, wow, that's a great technique. Or I know that thing that I've seen when I apply it to my team, it's going to be beneficial because I felt from the employee's perspective how much I valued it.
Intuition plays a big part.
Yeah. And so you package all of this knowledge, all of this experience, all of these insights so that you eventually can be that person and level up, because there's probably things that were good and bad as well. You notice you're like, less of the bad, I'll do more of the good. But then even still, you're human. There's always going to be an element of that you're not going to be 100% perfect. And that's fine. As long as you keep developing, keep understanding. And how old are you now?
28, about to be 29.
Happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
But yeah, imagine your mindset and your experience when you're 39, 49.
I can't wait. I'm very excited for 39, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe that the first 20 years is you figuring out, life as it is. After you hit 20, 21, 22, it depends. It varies from person to person. Then you actually start life.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to the point of leadership that you have to maybe for our viewers to actually have a relative experience. I would always compare it to having a teacher.
Yes.
When you're young and you're in school, school is already boring.
It depends.
Generally, most people don't like school, bro.
Depends. Like I grew up, I had a great time.
Yeah.
But maybe here it's different. I don't want to. I grew up in England. You
From
grew up
personal
here.
experience, school is not the best place. Like, you're a kid. You just want to be moving around, having fun, experiencing the world rather than having to sit. But the main reason I would say school is boring is because not all teachers know how to keep their students engaged. When you reminisce about school days, and there's always a couple of teachers or maybe one that just you don't forget.
Yeah, they were on point. They were like, wow, I wish all of them were like that.
Exactly. So whenever, you grow up, you're teaching a cousin or a nephew or a relative who's having exams or whatever, and you're helping them with a specific subject, you subconsciously almost try to become the best version of what you thought was the best teacher. So I think it's the same with leadership. Like we've all, if you have any kind of career in any business, you're always going to start with having bosses or leaders or managers. And if you're lucky enough, you'll come across good ones. Unfortunately, there aren't many who are great ones.
Yeah.
A lot of people are selfish. That's the thing that's one of, to me, the most important quality of a great leader is selflessness. It's human nature to be selfish. I mean, that's why they say you can't put on when an airplane is going down. You can't put the mask on the one sitting next to you. You have to put it on. And I think it speaks deeper to than just emergency situations. It's just human nature that you have to look after yourself before you can look after others. But when you're in a leading position, it means that you've already persevered long enough and you've been through enough to be able to actually gain that position, to be put in that position. Because not a lot of great companies usually tend to have the most effective leaders, because without leadership, even if it's 1,000 employees, it's going to be a sinking ship.
Yeah.
So selflessness and intuition, it's more about understanding human nature. Like some people have amazing social skills. Like, when there are some people who can identify a person's entire characteristic
Just from 5 minutes.
just from 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's actually a gift. I think it's I don't know if it's an instinct or something that you can develop,
You
but
can. I think you can.
I think you can, right?
You can
I agree,
develop it.
because I've gotten much better at it.
Me too.
The more people I've met throughout life, and especially in university when I was a student, I had the privilege of meeting people from all over the world. Because in Europe they have this program called Erasmus, right? And it's an
Yeah.
exchange program where all universities all over the world, not just Europe, have these agreements with each other. Well, we'll send you 5 students from our department. You send 5 over, and we can have a cultural enriched environment where they get to experience our culture. Our students get to experience your culture, and I was very privileged in that regard, because I was very lucky to be able to live in a dorm, and our campus was just full of international students from all over the world, and having those many experiences over 4 years, each semester, the whole campus is empty. A new wave of people comes in. So I've met more than 2,000-3,000 people just in those 3 years, as many as I could interact with, without draining my social battery, of course. But it was an amazing experience.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think that built that muscle. So when I realized, and actually once you have that muscle or you have that ability, it helps you improve on yourself more than actually detecting other people's flaws. Because once you're able to have that vision or have that ability to see through that veil or through that noise, you start to actually introspect your own flaws and what I've been doing without realizing, or maybe I have some body movement that are unnecessary or I need to control, or maybe I'm too fidgety, or maybe I talk too much and I don't listen enough, or maybe this and that. People have a keen subconscious eye for those kind of small things, and the best ones tend to be leaders in great positions.
Because it's a very good point you mentioned, because like now at university you've had the opportunity to interact with many people from many different cultures internationally, from Indians to Chinese. Like they've all got their own mindsets that they grew up with, around families that have certain habits, certain traditions.
And having my own unique perspective, being an Assyrian Orthodox from the Middle East, from one of the most ancient civilizations, I think we're amazing. Like I think we're very interesting culture, and our language, being bilingual, helps you actually even go a step further into understanding other people's cultural what we call it, those small things, like where origins of words, or why you'd have that specific saying in your culture that applies into other languages. Like we had a lot of similarities with Spanish people. We have a lot of family values similar to Italian people.
That's right.
The Bosnian people are some of my favorite people, very hospitable, very friendly. So it's an amazing eye-opening experience. I recommend anyone, and not just here from the Middle East, any student, to study abroad. Go outside of your country. It opens your eyes to the human experience.
Yeah, my university days, we had a lot of international students, but also I spent a lot of my time living in London. It's an international city.
100%.
Every street you go on, every place you go, every person you see, no two cultures sometimes are the same. Like, it's incredible. And then if you add on top of that the ability to travel around the world, it just opens your mind. And just to bring it back to leadership, you've understood different perspectives of different people from different cultures, of different age groups. You understand the motivations of people on a level even deeper than maybe they might know themselves. And that adds strength to you as a person, but as a leader. Now, if you are working in an environment where you're around lots of different people, and maybe you're starting your own business, more often than not, you might choose a business partner, or eventually, if you get big enough, you're going to need people to support you. Maybe you might need less people for certain tasks now that AI is in the mix, but
100%.
People are key. It's a business, it's an organization, and an organization by definition is a group of people working towards a common goal. And when you have people, you understand their motivations, you know how to incentivize them, how to motivate them, how to get the most out of not just them, but for themselves to apply themselves in a level that transcends just the financial, what they would stand to make at the end of the month. And if you can tap into that space and you can get employees that are very good, and this is the difference between employees with just an employee mentality and one such as yours before, where you had a bit more of an owner mindset. This is when you were asking your manager, I finished the task, but what more can I do? How can I use my time to support what you're doing? And they will give you more responsibility. They'll trust you more.
Yeah.
You'll get opportunities unlocked that you might not have had, or experiences that you've had that you have shaped you as a person now, have opened doors that you might not have had you not had that approach. So even if people listening now, they haven't yet started a business, they're considering it, or they may have even started. Having that approach to going above and beyond what is required allows you to develop those skills, but also the opportunity to speak, to engage with different types of people. It adds reps, it adds repetitions to your social muscle,
100%.
your understanding. And the more people you interact with, be it through maybe interviews or any environment in the workplace,
the more fluent you become at that language.
Exactly. So it's like immersion. If you want to learn Spanish, one of the best places to learn Spanish is to go to Spain and just sit there with people that only speak Spanish.
100%.
Within 2 months, you learn more than, let's say, studying Spanish at school for 2 years. And it's likewise with people. The more interactions you have, the better you become. And I think leadership is key if you want to get to a certain point in business where you can grow beyond yourself, beyond your own ideas. You can unite people around a common goal, a common purpose, and collectively work towards a project that allows you to just really build something worthwhile. And it's a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, they won't have that experience or that opportunity. But again, you're cultivating the seeds to get you to that point where you become a good leader. And that takes time, takes effort. Yes, patience, definitely. But that mindset of learning. Like we started with podcasts. Half the reason you like it is maybe because they're interesting, but half the reason is perhaps you can gain something.
100%.
Knowledge, insight from people that are 1, 2, 10 steps ahead of you in any walk of life. And that's key, because we live once. We're here, best case scenario, maybe 100 years.
You're very optimistic, brother.
Well, yeah, we'll see. With good living, with modern medicine.
I think 80 is taking it too far, given how much bad habits I have, like smoking.
You smoke?
Yeah, sometimes
I wouldn't have had you for a smoker.
Especially with a drink, you have to smoke.
Oh man!
Yeah.
But what about? Okay, so tell me about your habits now. You're a leader. You have a business. How's the business going, by the way? Do you mind me asking some juicy details?
Of course, yeah.
You're making a lot of money?
At the time, the region, Kurdistan region specifically, is going through what we call a pause in terms of economical growth. And that goes to the fact that the oil has been on hold for 2.5, 3 years, almost 3 years now. And the thing about an oil revolved country like Iraq, when your main export is oil, once that stops, everything else suffers.
Yeah.
So we are at a point where we're getting by, everyone's getting paid, but we're not making the goal margin of profit that we have for our fiscal year. So we have already decided to open a branch in Baghdad, which we had opened a month ago. And now we're going back and forth to Baghdad, because Baghdad is not struggling as much. They don't have the same restrictions when it comes to the oil production as Kurdistan, unfortunately. I hope they resolve it soon enough. It's a political issue that I'm sure many are familiar with, and I prefer to...
but Baghdad,
yeah.
Baghdad is an opportunity then that's easier. It's like almost then, in comparison, the wind is blowing with the sails there. It's
you have to adapt. Yeah. I mean, Baghdad is very different than Erbil in all ways. In culturally, lifestyle is different, different. It's just an entire different environment that if you are based in Erbil and you live in Erbil and you have the luxuries of Erbil, so to speak, because I really love this city and I consider it home, even though I'm not originally from here. We moved here in 2007, but I was young enough to adopt it as my homeland. But Baghdad is is, yes, it's easier to make money right now in Baghdad, but it has its own kind of challenges that you have to maneuver and find your way around. But definitely, when it comes to um, the let's say the financial availability or the ease of which you can earn a customer is less challenging in Baghdad than in Kurdistan at the moment. But once the oil situation resolves in Erbil, I don't think you can compete with her. Erbil is an amazing city when it's lifestyle wise, business wise. Even the profit margin in Erbil is higher because people here tend to pay even more. They don't argue. Oil companies in Erbil, they don't argue about.
I think this is part of the reason because there's less of them compared to maybe Baghdad or Basra or places like that.
It's a bit political, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's not go there then.
Yeah, exactly. It's more political. Baghdad, politics are more involved in terms of micromanagement.
Okay.
Than Kurdistan. Kurdistan it follows the capitalist model. It's a free for all. Follow the regulations, the rules. Have your papers in order. You're good to go. Business is business. No one is gonna knock on your door and ask for any favors for allowing you to do business here. Baghdad can be a bit challenging in that regard, where you have to know the right people. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
To be able to function there, not everyone is just allowed to open a company there or just go and do business there. There are some middlemen that you have to go through in order to achieve that. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I want us to talk about the future,
Mm-hmm.
but before we do, let's have a drink.
Sure. Our conversation would have been much more interesting if it wasn't water right now.
Yeah,
but we'll have that conversation later on.
We can have that. Yeah, we can get a cup of coffee and a tea afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you were referring
100%,
to.
yeah.
But
caffeine.
Yeah,
starts a great conversation.
Tell me about actually your habits, just like generally speaking. Do you drink a lot of coffee? Do you what? Because you look, dressed to impress. Well, yeah,
100%.
I'm gonna wear a suit next time. You've motivated me, and
I'm happy that I was able to leave a positive impact.
I love wearing suits. I'm gonna be honest.
Me too. I love the way they make me feel.
Yeah, they make you feel. It's like you're wearing a suit of armor.
Yeah,
almost.
Technically,
but
in some way, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, where we're living now and the time of year, I don't know about you. You seem to be maybe a bit more conditioned to this than I am. Me coming from England, spending most of my life in that. If anyone knows anything about the weather in England,
I don't think you can be conditioned to the heat of this country. Our summer is unconditionable, brother.
Yeah, but
it's a bit. It's early enough to get away with it now. But in a couple of weeks, yeah, I'm gonna have
the shirt, the jacket's coming off, the tie's coming off, the top button.
At least the jacket's coming off, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, we're talking about the future now, aren't we? So, for you and your business, obviously, you've developed certain traits.
Mm-hmm.
Do you drink coffee? Do you drink tea? What allows you to operate on a high level these days? Because you strike me as someone that has solved a lot of personal challenges in the sense that you're getting the most out of life in terms of getting the knowledge from places that have allowed you to get to where you are today, be them work experiences, life experiences, university, friends, family. But what about day-to-day living for you now in terms of like eating and drinking and sleeping? And how do you stay as a top performer? Like, do you have any tips, tricks that you've learned that allow you to maintain that ability to operate on a high level and get the most out of every day?
100%. I consider having a good sleep is the top priority of any productive day. If you didn't sleep well the day before, then your next day is going to be ruined. No matter how much coffee you drink, no matter how much nicotine you consume, no matter how much meditation you think you're doing, it's not going to help. Sleep is top. I don't
compromise on.
I don't compromise on with anything. Like, it could be if I have an important busy day tomorrow, I go to sleep and I have at least 7 hours of sleep. I try to. Once you have that out of the way, Caffeine definitely helps. The first thing I do in the morning is have a couple of cups, not one, but a couple of cups of coffee.
Before breakfast?
Before, I don't have breakfast. I skip, yeah, I skip breakfast. I do intermittent fasting. I have one meal a day at around 5 to 6 p.m. And
Interesting.
yeah, it helps me a lot because through fasting, as long as you're keeping hydrated, you're laser focused. You know, your brain is not foggy. You don't have that carb crash that you have after eating, or you don't feel sleepy. Throughout the day, the more hours pass, which from ketosis, or the more time you've been fasting, the higher that focus until you reach a specific taper, and you have to compensate with some food. But if you do it like an 18-20 hour fasting and 4 hours of eating, you'll be okay. So I do that, and I try to maintain physical shape, physical health. Working out. Running is important. I do 30 minutes of hardcore running every day before starting my lifting workout.
When do you do so? Like, give me a day in the life
So a
of
day in
Yousif.
life, I wake up at around 6:30. I have my coffee. I don't like to rush in the morning, so I sometimes wake up earlier than when it's time to work, just to settle. You know, when you wake up, you need that. You have to start your day off on a
Get your
on
bearings.
yeah, you have to start your day off on a positive note. I try to avoid social media when I first wake up. I either open a specific book that I enjoy reading, or a podcast that I was already watching before going to bed, and continue that podcast with coffee. I consume nicotine either in the form of cigarettes or in the form of nicotine pouches. That helps me have my bearings on life once I wake up. That takes about an hour, 45 minutes. Once I'm through that, I get ready, I have a shower, I take care of everything, I go to work, and then my day starts from there. There are meetings. I always enjoy meeting with new customers because it's exhilarating for me, because I see it as a challenge. My favorite part of work is having arranged a meeting with a customer, trying to win that challenge of, it's almost like a mind game. Am I going to win them over, or are they not going to be my customers? That's very interesting to me. I enjoy that part of work. So once we're done work around 5, sometimes 6, I go home, I have lunch, I rest for an hour.
Lunch or breakfast?
Yeah, lunch, breakfast, dinner, it's all in one.
It's one meal,
Just
yeah?
one meal. Yeah, I'm very strict with it. I sometimes have cheat days on Fridays with
Okay.
family dinner or
Yeah.
something. Everyone's at home, no one has work, you know. But other than that, I'm very specific with that diet because I've been on it for 3 years now.
3 years.
Yeah, and it's life changing.
3 years eating one meal.
One meal. But
I want to know what that meal is.
yeah, but when you're fasting, you get to eat whatever you want. Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily. It has to have enough protein in
Yeah.
it, enough vegetable in it. But it can be a bit, it can contain some carbs.
Yeah.
If you're craving pizza, you can have a pizza, but with a side of beef or like, to me, protein is the most essential.
Yeah.
Having enough protein. But other than that, vegetables are secondary. They're an option. I don't think vegetables do anything for you. If you take supplements, vitamins, you'll be okay without them. Yeah, I'm a carnivorous kind of guy. I prefer carnivore diet rather than a mix of herbivore or a mix of fish. I don't mind fish, but I tend to avoid it. But yeah, my diet is mainly the main principle is to have one meal every 24 hours. So I have a meal at 6 p.m. The next thing that I'm going to consume, no sugar, no sweeteners, nothing with it, just water and coffee, plain coffee, like an espresso, or not even milk, because milk can have some fat and lipid in it that will ruin your ketosis. So once you do that, you feel much better, much more focused. It's hard to adapt to it for the first month of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least a month, I would say, to be fair. Some people might struggle.
So you persevered through a month of struggle. What made you feel like this is the path for me in terms of one meal a day? And obviously, there's a saying, if you can't do it for a decade,
Mm-hmm.
don't do it for a day. Obviously,
I think once you get used to
it's
it,
sustainable for you
you
3
cannot
years.
leave. Yeah, I think once you are adapted to that, you cannot choose a different diet.
So you've unlocked an element of life that has allowed you to tap into.
It's a cheat code. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it taps into a primitive instinct. Like if you think of human evolution, even though technology have evolved, our housing situations evolved,
Our bodies are
our bodies
still,
are the
yeah.
same. So 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, our ancestors didn't have the privilege of having 3, 4, 5 meals a day filled with saturated carbohydrates and sugars. And, this is all technically poison. Even though you don't feel the effects of this poison instantaneously after you eat it, but over a long period of time, it shows. Like it degenerates nerves, it degenerates your joints, your brain function.
Yeah.
It even lowers IQ in some cases. So I try to stay away from sugar either way. Even when I fast, I only have that one meal, no dessert. Sugar to me is
Even things like honey, you wouldn't touch?
no,
Like natural honey.
not really. No, it's
Interesting.
because I
So-
think sugar is just not good for you. Even
And-
though it's great, it makes you feel great. That sugar rush.
In the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but-
but you pay for it later.
Yeah, the crash from it is horrible. I have withdrawal symptoms from sugar when I have it.
Do you, I have to ask,
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I want to talk about the future and where you see the business going, but this is very, very important to understand your mindset and also how you operate on a day-to-day, because obviously, by the way, what you're saying, there's a lot of overlaps in terms of the way I live my life. Not one meal a day, I have
Yeah.
to say, but
It's not for everyone.
yeah. And I mean, if it works for you, it works for you.
Yeah.
And people listening, it might work for them. Others might be like
If you don't
repulsed
take
by
my
the
word
idea.
for it, go watch the Andrew Huberman podcast. Andrew Huberman, a great neuroscientist, and an American doctor who has an amazing podcast, and he gives great tips and suggestions on, just mental health, physical health, and longevity. So that's where I first picked up the idea. When I applied it, I was a student actually when I applied it. I was in university. And it actually helped because when you're a student, you don't have that much time on your hands, trying to juggle work, because I was working part-time, and then doing your theses and then studying for exams. Cooking is not a great option. And takeout, I don't usually prefer to have takeout food because also it's not very good for you.
You can't really rely on what's in it. Sometimes they put mixed in ingredients that you might not, it might not 100% conform
I'm very
to.
specific about what I eat. I think what you ingest usually tends to affect your wavelength.
Yeah, you
so
are
to
what you
speak.
eat.
Yeah, you are what you eat, literally. Yeah.
It's interesting. And so for me, I've just touched on the personal experience. For me, obviously I'm more than 7 years, I'm a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
For me to perform on a high level every day is required to get the most progress in my business, but also personally in any walk of life, be it, fitness or relationships with people or anything.
Mm-hmm.
One key thing I've noticed is my brain. I am constantly studying on what allows me to get the most out of my brain in terms of being able to concentrate, being able to allow it to not be feeling fatigued or foggy or things like that. And I notice when food...
Or stagnant.
Yeah. Sleep is a big one, 100%. I 100% agree with you. That's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 priority. A good night's sleep solves a lot of problems. Diet key. And I still eat 3 meals a day. Maybe after this I might consider dropping to 2 or 1, but I have to be honest, yeah. But yeah, anyway, we can still be friends. We can still...
Oh, definitely.
But for me personally, I optimize for foods that allow me to not feel sluggish after a meal. I don't lean too much into carbs. Protein, definitely, some vegetables. And I choose it at a point where I most need it. Like before I'm about to dip because I'm feeling very hungry, I have enough food that allows me to get another 4 or 5 productive hours and continue that momentum of what I was working on, what I'm doing. But very key, because in order to build, I'm not sure if this is, I've met a lot of business owners in my life, and there's a correlation between mindsets often. They want to get the most out of themselves and apply themselves in a way that allows them to get the most out of life, the opportunities that they have, the people, everything. It's not a necessity to be successful in business to do these things or to be hyper focused on self
100%.
development, be it learning, also self-preservation in terms of sleeping well, eating well, all of the rest of it. But it really helps.
It definitely helps.
And it allows you to increase the likelihood of success. If you think of business as there was a statistic I read years ago, it's 9 out of 10 new businesses fail
100%.
within the first, I think, 5 or 7 years. I can't remember the timeline. But anyway, it just goes to show that you need resilience. You need all of these small things to align, and also market conditions. You talked a little bit about the struggles that you've got depending on where you're focusing geographically, but also the team, the expertise, the ability to learn and adapt. It's like you go in maybe with a plan, but when you realize when you're in it, you have to go left, you have to go right, you have to adapt, you have to learn something new, you have to find expertise here. And if you haven't got that self-discipline to be able to persevere consistently and also learn the things that you don't know or lean into the areas that are outside of your immediate comfort zone. You talked about when you meet clients, new customers perhaps, you don't know who they are. You might have some briefing in terms of where they're from and some background from conversations you've had with other people, like what kind of person they are, what incentivizes them, blah, blah, blah. But you're entering an unknown space.
100%.
And I have a feeling that you like that.
I enjoy it.
Yeah,
it's
because it's like you're learning about them and also how you can work with them to work together and, you know, make that potential customer a real customer. And that's I think key to be able to move out of
100%.
your comfort zone and into your development zone.
Actually, I would consider it to be my comfort zone. That's the thing. It's in my nature. I'm an extrovert in nature. I enjoy meeting new people, having new experiences. I enjoy speaking to people and having mind stimulating conversations. And I think actually that goes to add to the fact why I enjoy podcasts so much, because that's what it is, even though you're not having your own input. But sometimes, most times, the best way to learn is to listen rather than speak. So it's actually a benefit. Like even when you have the urge to say something, watching a podcast stops you from doing that and just listening. And maybe your questions would be answered afterwards. And they usually tend to be answered afterwards once you go through the podcast long enough. But going back to meeting new clients, I related to the fact that it's just, I like the challenge of it. Because when you are meeting someone for the first time, you're not guaranteeing any results. They've given you the privilege of their time, their attention. They're giving you technically a shot. Convince me. You're a salesperson at heart. Everyone is a salesperson. When you meet someone, you're selling your character to impress them or to have them like you. We're social beings.
In any walk of life.
In any walk of life.
If it's dating, if it's business, if it's anything.
Exactly.
It's like you're selling them on why you're certainly worth their time and they're selling you.
This is the one aspect where you actually get paid if you are good at doing it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're meeting a new friend at a social event or whatever, and they don't like you, too bad. Your life is not going to be that different. But when your livelihood depends on it, it's a whole different mind game. Like, it's a whole different feeling. Like, I need to find a way to be able to, first of all, impress on the differences or the qualifications of my business, what makes our company different, what makes us unique, and try at the same time play on the human side of the client. Like, at the end, they're people. They like compliment. They like the fact that you show some kind of respect or appreciation to them. You're not completely oriented about the work. So it's a balance. Like, you have to tackle all aspects of human conditioning, the trying to speak to their needs and trying to alleviate them, or trying to explain to them that you can alleviate them from that extra headache that they may have at work, or extra responsibility that they can give you that responsibility and take care of instead of them.
Solve their problem.
Exactly. And at the same time, impressing on the fact of what makes you different, what makes your company different, your services different. Because a lot of companies, especially when we're dealing with large-scale companies, like
What kind of companies?
like
Name drop some
like
clients.
PepsiCo or Coca-Cola or Kodak.
You're working with these clients?
We have now we're actually arranging a contract with PepsiCo to handle their logistics.
Can we talk about that, or is that privileged?
Well, it's not finalized yet. It's not a secret. Whatever work happens in Erbil, your competitors tend to know about. It's like you're not doing you're not fooling anyone. It's not like you're dealing in clandestine business. It's very straightforward. You're a contractor. You go into tendering with competitors, and if you win, you win. It's very fair game, and so that doesn't mean that we're exclusive. We're the only service provider, because some of these companies are so large that if you have the privilege of actually just taking one aspect of their business, is good enough. So this scale of companies, a lot of times they don't even look at your pricing, rather than the quality of work that you can provide, the customer service, your engagement. Because in the logistics, there's an infamous nature to the work where, if you are a shipping company and you have a vessel shipping from the U.S. to Iraq, and there was some geopolitical event that halted all shipments, and the vessel stopped and it had to take another route, or it had to take a detour. That delay, there's nothing you can do about it, but the end user, the client, wants to have their shipment on time because they have a calendar, they have a timeline.
That really tests your problem-solving skills.
They have dates, A lot of companies, they just tend to ignore the client with his inquiries and his pushing towards finding a solution. And he's like, you have to be able to be open-minded enough and have enough patience and resilience and social capabilities to be able to deal with that frustration of the client. And that's key in this business, because clients do not appreciate being ignored or feeling underappreciated or feeling unattended to. I need to feel that
they need to feel like they're number one priority at all times.
Yeah, because technically they are.
Yeah. And if they don't feel that, they'll go elsewhere. Maybe then
that's someone else who makes them feel that way. And even if the result does not change, even if the shipment will not be rushed or it will not be fast forwarded, but you made them feel good about the situation. You made them feel comfortable. You made them feel that everything's under control, even though there's a delay. We'll try to speed up the process when it gets here. We're not going to take as long as the custom clearance would take, or once the shipment lands from the vessel, we're going to make sure that the driver who drives it from the border to your warehouse will be extra hasty, so while maintaining health, safety, and environmental standards, of course. And so we always try to tackle our clients that way. And to me, is the most fun or the most interesting, and it's the part of work that I enjoy the most. I think I'm a salesman at heart.
Sales is needed.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about the future.
After a drink. Nice studio, by the way. Did I say that? Did I mention that?
We're live. We're live? Yeah, you live to the audio, radio? He does this to me sometimes. I love the producing team here. But yeah, beautiful team.
I mean, even we're live. We're doing great, bro.
I love this. Yeah. And the studio it really opens the mind. It opens the mouth to talk about anything and everything. And by the way, are you enjoying is this your first podcast ever?
Yeah.
You've listened to millions, but your first time actually being on this side of the microphone.
I'm very happy about it. I've always fanatized about, being a guest, but I'm glad that it came to. I think people can manifest their desires.
Yeah.
I truly believe in universal karma.
There's a book on that. I'm sure you may have. Yeah.
I watched a lecture about it. Not a podcast, but a university lecture about it.
If you're clear on what you want, and you start visualizing how you can get there, eventually conversations that you have day to day or decisions you make will naturally gravitate towards increasing the likelihood of that
100%.
happening. And we can call it fate, we can call it... I like the idea of you being able to control your own destiny if you make the right decisions. You can't control what's going to happen in the world. Let's say you're talking about a shipping route. It gets blocked because of
But you can control how you react to it.
Yes, a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah.
But you can control... what you can control is your attitude, your decisions. And as long as you realize that, like, for example, I don't know if tomorrow it's going to rain, but I can control whether or not I'll be happy or sad or...
That's the Stoic philosophy, 100%.
Yeah.
You can only control your reaction to events that are out of your control. And I think if you can practice that and you can strengthen that muscle, you become very content and happy in life generally, because you don't have that mentality of victimhood or playing the victim or why did this happen to me?
A victim of circumstance.
Yeah, but that's the worst mindset to have, in my opinion. That's the worst way to approach life, because life never claimed to be fair and equal. You know, life is just waves of water that you're trying to swim through without drowning. Technically, that's a very sadistic way of describing it, because life is beautiful, in my opinion. It's not just a struggle, but struggle is a huge part of it.
Struggle is good.
It's what makes it interesting. Like, without struggle, imagine if all of it was just comfort and easy. It becomes like it becomes redundant. Yeah.
There is again, I don't want to keep quoting books, but there is a book already years ago by a famous psychologist. You probably read it. It's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
I'm going to ruin it for you. I'm going to spoil
go
it.
I love spoilers about books specifically.
Yeah, the essence of the book is to live is to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of life is to find meaning in the struggle.
It's very chauvinistic. Chauvin also said that somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in his own way, very sadistic, dark way.
Yeah, but this is the thing. Like, for me now, I could have been born into privilege, and technically, some might argue that I was. I was born in London. I was raised there. And even though my family struggled to begin with it was their first... when I was born, they'd only spent a year in the country, still trying to navigate the language, the culture, requalify. Difficult times to begin with. We lived in a very small place. Through hard work, through resilience, through learning, through development, they built the ceiling in which became the floor for my brother and I to build on. But that journey for them, as difficult as it was, gave them purpose, gave them meaning, gave them a reason to try hard, to turn up every day, to give their best. And those values were instilled in my brother and I. And we're in an environment now, my brother and I, where things are okay, but they weren't good enough. We still needed to study at university. We still needed to apply ourselves professionally to try and build something even more, because, as you know, life is not cheap. And in order to live well, even if you are modest with your spendings and,
it's not getting
habits,
any cheaper either.
Yeah, I mean, people want the best. And the best doesn't mean the best car, but it means the best opportunities, the best medical care. Sometimes it costs money, or experiences, travel. If you have that drive, that willingness to apply yourself to try and reach those heights, then you can get there through hard work, through resilience, through learning, through spotting opportunities, through not thinking of yourself as a victim. The cards that you were dealt, the cards that you were born with, are different from the cards that I was. But we've naturally gravitated towards perhaps similar thinking patterns, maybe not similar decisions in terms of business. Your industry is different to mine. I'm in education. So, but the idea is that in business in general, for me, this is one of the main reasons I gravitated towards starting a business. You have more control of your destiny. Even if business is not going well and you're an employee and they cut you off because you're no longer needed, you're redundant, or they've not got the funds to keep your role intact. By creating your own business, by developing the skills of building your own business, I don't want to say you immunize yourself against that risk, but you make it much less likely that will be happening to you, because the skills that you develop throughout that journey are transferable. So even if that business doesn't work anymore, or you need to pivot, you've got enough character, you've got enough skills, you've got enough resilience that you've cultivated in other areas to get you to that point, to allow you to transition. And knowing what you know now in business, if you had to start again tomorrow, it would take you much less time. Would you not agree?
100%. Because you come with this arsenal of experience and knowledge. And to add to your point, I would even argue that the most successful people, or the people who tend to find the most success in their life, irrespectively of comparison, tend to have gone through a threshold of struggle early on or at some point in their life that they persevered through. Now, the reason I say threshold is because there are some, horrible, unfortunate situations where a person cannot bounce from, and they become a prisoner of that reality, and that affects and is implemented throughout their life. That's unfortunate. It happens. It can happen. But there's a specific threshold of struggle, even pain, of challenge, that once you go through and you can surpass, then nothing can stop you. And I think that applies to even the most, I'm not familiar with a fan of the UFC, the mixed martial arts sport, but it's a very interesting sport. I enjoy it. I'm not the most avid fan, but I watch whenever I can, especially when it's a big fight or big names. And whenever you go deeper into the backstory of the fighters, the most prevalent fighters, the most dominant ones, tend to come from, poverty,
difficult backgrounds,
struggle, and it speaks a lot to what we were discussing right now.
Mike Tyson, I don't want to make this about fighting, we're talking about business, but Mike Tyson once said that he's a champion in his time.
He's the champion in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, we leave that up for debate. The audience can decide for themselves. But what I will say is he was successful in his own way in life. And once his son came to him and said, "Dad, I want to be a champion fighter like you." And Mike Tyson, almost as a reflex reaction, said, "You can't.
You cannot."
And the son was intrigued. He was like, "Why? Why not? Why is my dad telling me that I can't be what I want to be or dream?" Which actually is better for Mike Tyson. He gave him the truth. Yeah, because to be honest, and the reason why Mike Tyson said that to his son is because his exact response, I believe, was around the area of, "Son, you are born without worry, without concern of money, without the environment is safe, you're around people that care and that support you, you're in private school, you've not got that hunger, you've not got that fire that I had to, in my life, going through the struggle, the deprivation, the lack of opportunities, the environment I was in was very toxic." I think he was around criminal types even when he was younger. And so the only option for him to express or develop himself was in the area of boxing, fighting. And he said, why would you willingly go into an area of being punched in the face if you don't have to? And you don't have to, because again, we talked about it before, the ceiling he made for his children is the floor on which they stand on and build. And the ceiling that he cultivated for them is one where they don't need to fight. They can apply themselves in other walks of life and be successful
100%.
without going through the risks that he did. And so that fire, that drive that allowed him to become the champion doesn't exist in his son, or can't exist. And in some ways, the son could argue that he was robbed of that opportunity. But where there is a lack one place, there is an abundance elsewhere. And so there's other ways that he could apply himself and contribute meaningfully to the world. If not in entertainment and fighting, it could be something else. So, but it circles around that theme of struggle. Struggle is important. And I am glad that I wasn't born with an inheritance of endless amounts of money I could spend on anything and everything, because that would reduce the appreciation of money in my eyes, remove the need perhaps to feel that I need to work to achieve anything because everything is there. Maybe. I'm predicting. I've not been through that. But I'm glad that I was born with a lack of certain things that I wanted, or wanted to achieve things that I hadn't yet achieved, and I had that drive to pursue them, because that struggle creates drive. It creates the willingness to push. And I think great people have great backstories, and
100%.
fighters, business owners, struggle is a part of life, and if you can find a way to channel it and make it your fuel to keep pushing forward, then you almost become invincible. Nothing can stop you.
100%. And I would say that especially people from the region, from Iraq, who were born in the 90s, late 80s, and early 2000s, I think we would all agree that we were lucky to have been born at the beginning of struggle where, you're young enough to understand the situation where, not everyone had an abundant access for food, comfort, electricity. Sanctions were made on the country, then wars, and then political unrest, and then sectarianism, and then whatnot. And I think it wasn't an easy time. Like, I think many people would consider that period of the modern Iraqi history to be one of the worst times in the modern history of this country. But I would argue that of course, it could either make you or break you like any other situation. But for those who were able to persevere, and once you saw that side, then the other side became um, so much more worthy to fight for, so much more worthy to persevere towards, um, so much more desirable, so to speak, because I've seen what it is to be in a bad situation, and I've felt how it feels to be in a bad situation. Now, what am I willing to give? How hard am I willing to go? How far am I willing to walk? Like, when you're on a marathon, and not everyone completes the marathon because there's that moment when, you're in fatigue.
They call it the wall.
Yeah, you're hurting, and then you come across this decision. Am I gonna continue, or am I done for? And that applies to life itself. And when you have something in the background that when you look back and see, like, it's bad enough or horrible enough or it's challenging enough or it's just enough to make you face that decision with, well, this pain or this fatigue or this struggle is nothing compared to what I have back there. So I need to move on. I need to persevere. It goes on with the fighters, goes on with entrepreneurs, it goes on with, you call it investors, job business owners, and ventures, capital ventures. It's just a part of human nature, and that's where like when someone say, "Oh, you're just a spoiled brat," you just spoiled to the point where you don't value anything in life, and life becomes to some extent redundant. And I don't think that's the happiest state to live in, like having everything available, all comfort.
But there's always a lack.
There's always
Like
going to be a
even the
void or a
person that
gap.
has everything has a lack, perhaps a lack of.
There should be a balance now.
Yeah.
I must imply this point, because I'm not saying that you just should grow in hunger and pain and challenge and lack of necessary needs in life, but there should be a balance of what we call requirements, like education, food on the table.
Yeah, the basic needs. I think it's.
But even those should be looked at as privileges.
Yes.
Yes.
They're seemed as like they're taken for granted now as basic existent needs, but again, they're privileges.
They're privileges.
Not even less than 100 years ago, a lot of places in the world didn't have access to standardized education that was abundant and yet quality as well. It depends. Even if it is available, is it
good quality?
So
I was lucky, very lucky in that regard, where in my first 10 years, when I was up until 10 years old, things were not looking great. But I was conscious enough. I had the ability to discern, reality from my childhood world. Like, okay, this is real. It's happening. At that time, everyone was struggling. So I'm not unique in that regard. But I also was privileged enough where Now, my father started contracting, especially when the U.S. government started investing a lot of funding to rebuild Iraq, and he took a chance here or there, and he was able to grow us financially, and we're more stable than ever before. That was the time when things started to improve, and that was the time when I also happened to be lucky enough to have had the mindset of my parents to have been, okay, education is important, so they sent me to the best private schools in the country, and that catapulted me to, to have goals, like real goals in life, rather than just being stale and stagnant in a specific level of life. Because if you don't have the drive, if you are not really hungry for it, you're just lying to yourself.
It gave you a good foundation, but again, foundation, everyone, it's like where you start from the race.
The
like,
tools,
a lot of people, let's say you might start a little bit further ahead in the race than other people, but the drive is what allows you to push forward.
100%.
I really want to talk more about the future, but let's save it for another time. I would love to have you on again as a guest.
100%. I'll be happy to be here, brother. It's been a great conversation. We already passed the hour mark.
I don't even know how long it's been. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
But Mr. Yousif, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here on the Startup Show.
Great conversation. One of the best conversations I've had in a long time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And we all appreciate it. And I hope the audience can appreciate it too.
I hope so too.
But yeah, until next time, please.
Deal.
Please take care of yourself. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my
Yousif.
brother. Wow.